Hey guys, it's Godbars here, the self-proclaimed hip-hop historian, and this is the 104th episode of my series, where I grab a vinyl from my collection, talk about why I love it, what influence it had, and what its place is in the grand scheme of hip-hop. While the West Coast, without a doubt, produced a number of classic LPs in the 90s that were more commercially successful than this one, I got so many obvious essential classics out of the way in my last 90s group. I don't really see any reason to discuss these albums in order from most to least popular. Instead, I'm going to go with personal favorites like America's Nightmare by Spice One, where they still had plenty of influence, but I don't feel like they're talked about quite as often as they deserve to be. Most of the releases in Spice's discography are fire, especially the first few with classics like 187 Row. However, my personal favorite would have to be his third album here, which actually shares the name of Mobb Deep's super underrated 2004 album, though they are spelt differently. While he's definitely another one of those legends I don't see eye to eye with on everything, nobody goes to hardcore West Coast gangster rap to hear progressive political takes, and even if a lot of the legends from that time haven't changed their views since then, the fact is many of their contemporaries have. I know people like to think of that as them being brainwashed and giving in to the liberal PC media, but in reality, maybe that's more to do with some of us having used words that we just wouldn't use now, not out of fear of being canceled, but out of respect and not wanting to go out of our way to belittle people for something as personal as sexuality. I think certain giant rappers or celebrities in general only have yes men or people exactly like them in their circle, so like Kanye, they fall into this trap of thinking the people who try and check them and educate them because they care, those are apparently the bad friends who changed on you. They act like they're fighting the good fight and defending themselves against this evil agenda, and think people who are accepting of others must have let their guard down and accepted Satan. But especially in hip-hop, in my opinion, this homophobia mostly just comes from ignorance, and mainly it just makes these people uncomfortable. This isn't really specific to Spice, it's just a larger problem I have with a lot of OGs in hip-hop, and while I'm sure some people don't really want to hear this, I felt like it was worth at least throwing my 2 cents in for. But while certain slurs might make me cringe in retrospect, you have to take it with a grain of salt and kind of just accept that this was the norm at the time, and you can't expect society to change retroactively to fit what's now appropriate. It isn't like the content here even goes anywhere near the territory of, say, something like that old Jizza song where he talks about shooting up an LGBTQ bar. It's more just my personal indecision about artists whose old music I love, but I couldn't disagree more with the rants that they'll post on social media. It isn't necessarily the content he chooses to talk about that drew me to Spice One in the first place, it's more a combination of his studied, speedy, and choppy flow, his perfect rap voice that you could easily pick out of a lineup, and the killer schemes he comes up with. He's one of the only rappers with a flow comparable to E40, which kind of makes sense considering they came up together. But while he has a similar inhuman quickness to 40, Spice's deep tone and attention-grabbing presence likens him a bit more to someone like Ice Cube or Tupac. He found the perfect balance for having verses that were extremely impressive technically, yet they never crossed that bridge of becoming excessive or overly flashy. This album also ends with one of my favorite diss tracks ever, where the rapper he's dissing, MC Pooh Man, is hard to find much background or information for, which is likely because whatever remained of his career was snuffed out with this brutal diss. This track also flips the interrogation scene from Menace to Society, with the skit replacing the cop with Spice One and Kane with Pooh Man. To be honest, he kind of puts dude to rest from the start, because even the first few lines on You Done Fucked Up are golden, with Spice kicking the door down with How you gonna start some shit with the shit starter? Knew you was a bitch the first time I saw ya. Walking around sucking on everybody's dick, trying to get a deal, but your record sounds straight like shit. You was lucky to be signed with Jive, dropped your ass when your record stopped at 135. So next time you come at me, you best come clean, have your ass using blood for Listerine. His energy is infectious from the very first track, and it makes it hard not to get hyped as he's one of the very few rappers in the same league to me as Scarface, in terms of you being forced to believe pretty much every word that comes out of their mouth because both are just so convincing. You really can't discuss pioneers of Bay Area hip-hop without mentioning Spice One, as he was one of the only dudes I know of who was putting on and representing for the Bay as early as guys like Too Short, Mac Dre, and as I mentioned earlier, E40, who was a frequent collaborator of his, with multiple guest appearances on here. He actually has arguably my favorite guest verse that comes on the opening track, D-Boy's Got Love for Me, where he has no issue matching the high bar that was set by Spice's verse. His most memorable set of lines for me is when he says, "Just call me Chef Boyardee Boy, soda for bacon, cupcakes and cookies, rappies I'm making, huh? Tall cash, can't let he cut my grass, don't make me have to come back and split your parents' house in half with my Sigsar P226, Diana Ross's cousin Nina, misdemeanor, body bleeder, heartless, empty the cartridge roll, smartless, get out of Dodge so cold." The rest of the features are delegated to equally momentous names like Tupac, 187 Pac, and Method Man. Spice was actually a member of the Dangerous Crew alongside Too Short and other legends, and also on the roster is Ant Banks, who was one of the talented producers to make a lot of the beats on here. Spice 1 2 had a hand in the production himself, but the rest is handled by Blackjack, DJ Slip, and California legend Battle Cat. I'm going to leave the first and last track out for favorites since I talked about them both and don't feel like there's really any fat to cut off this album. With that being said, my honorable mentions would include Strap on the Side, Tell Me What That Mail Like, African American Man Sings the Blues, Blackjack Edition, Hard to Kill, Bustas Can't See Me, Murder Ain't Crazy, Stickin' to the G Code, and Three Strikes. My three favorite songs on here overall, again omitting the first and last track, would probably have to be Face of a Desperate Man, Jealous Got Me Strapped, and You Can Get a Gap for that. Thank you for watching my 104th video. Next time we're going back over to the Mecca to cover a long overdue supergroup. So check for that one, and if you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what your favorite songs off of this gangster rap classic are. Don't forget to have a great day, and I'll see you next time, okay? Alright.